Today we have with us, I think, I'll be very honored to introduce, Prashant Jain sir, who's been, Prashant Jain sir is the CIO and Executive Director for, AMC. I think is one name that we know. Shortly, I'll introduce the, profile. I think that should tell us all about. We also have Ashok Kanawala with us, who's been the product and he's been one of the, pioneers in the industry. I think with us, he's also with us today. To taking it short, I think this session we'll talk about market opportunities and economy and market opportunities in terms of mutual funds. Where yes, I think we all get an opportunity, in the next 15 minutes to ask our doubts, our queries, which we wanted to clarify from the Prashant Jain sir. To introduce him, Prashant Jain is an executive director and Chief Investment Officer of HDFC Mutual Fund, India's leading mutual fund company that all we know. HDFC Mutual Fund average assets under management is over almost 3,750 billion, of which 1,500 billion is in equities, and which is almost all about 45% plus equity-oriented schemes as on October 2020. He has about 29 years of investment management experience. Prashant holds a distinction of being the only fund manager in India and one of the few globally to have continuously managed a scheme for over 26 years. This fund namely HDFC Balance Advantage Fund, earlier known as Prudent Fund, we all know, is the largest equity-oriented scheme in India and has delivered a CAGR of almost 16.9% since inception till October end 2020. Sir has completed his PGDM from Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore in 1991. Before that, he has obtained a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. Prior to this, I think Prashant has worked with SBI Mutual Fund from 1991 to 93, as well as Zurich Mutual Fund between 93 to 2003. There's about 10 years there. In different capacities, he moved to HDFC Mutual Fund. Subsequently, to the to the takeover of Zurich in India Mutual Fund by HDFC Mutual Fund in 2003. So this talks volumes about Prashantji. I think he's been one of the pioneers and he's been trendsetter in the mutual fund market. It's been a great pleasure to have you on our Angel Connect program, sir. I think we will once again welcome you to this particular program along with Ashok. Sir, what we do generally is that we at Angel we are trying to connect our customers and sub-brokers to the industry wizards like you to come here, understand the trends in the market today and especially after this pandemic or during this pandemic to understand how to invest, where to invest, how to maximize the benefit as an investor from the mutual fund side. Also today we have seen the markets have been peaking at all-time high. I think that's something that all of us have happy about. But at the same time, when it comes to investment, we need to want to be slightly cautious about how do we invest and choose the right fund. With that, I welcome you for this program, and I think next 15-20 minutes you can deliver your keynote and your observations. Then probably we'll leave it for audience to ask us questions, so we can revert.
Sure, Nikhil, thank you very much for inviting me on this very prestigious platform. And friends, very good afternoon to you, and thank you very much for being a part of this event. See, COVID and lockdown are once in a lifetime or more than one, even once in two lifetime kind of events. And we are all learning as we experience this. And my 3 decades of experience in capital markets has not prepared me for dealing with an eventuality like that. So to that extent, all of us are learners. We are learning in this situation. I think whatever I say, the base assumption is that the lockdown will end. And over time, it could be few months, it could be few weeks, it could be few quarters, it could be 6-9 months also. The base assumption is that life will come back to near normal and economy will start functioning like it used to do in pre-COVID days. So that is the base assumption, and why I'm saying this is that in the less likely or unlikely event of a once again resurgence in whatever, or vaccines not being available or failing. I mean, these are not eventualities what one can comment. But with this base assumption, whatever I say, please bear this in mind. I think there are both good and bad, difficult things for the Indian economy. At one level, we are extremely fortunate to be in this country at this point of time, because COVID is not all negatives for India. It has brought certain positives for India as well. And to my mind, the positives will outlive the negatives. The positives are that because of COVID, oil prices have fallen very sharply. Interest rates globally have fallen very sharply. And liquidity is huge, massive globally. These are two things which India needs most from outside India: oil and capital. And I think low interest rates, availability of long term funds at low interest rates, and oil being cheap are big positives for India. Current year, after almost 16 years, India will be a current account surplus country. Our foreign exchange reserves, I am sure you are observing that they are touching new high every day, just like the index is touching. Our foreign exchange reserves are also at lifetime highs. So externally, India is actually in a very strong position, and we have actually never had such a great or favorable external environment for India. And that is why I said that COVID is not all negatives, it has actually brought some positives as well. A third thing which you should appreciate is the manufacturing opportunity which is now available to India. And COVID has actually, uh, you know, enabled, I think, faster progress for India to capitalize on that opportunity. See, China has grown massively in last 2 decades, and China was the factory of the world. We all know that. But because of this rapid growth in China, the wages in China have also grown considerably. And China is now less competitive in manufacturing compared to other Asian countries. And that is why manufacturing was slowly shifting out of China in last few years. Now, what COVID has done, it has created an environment when this shift, what which could have taken maybe 5, 7 years, I think will quicken and will now take place in a lesser time frame. Because of the close association of COVID with China, and because of the over dependence or high concentration of supply chain in China, and the disruption caused in those supplies has created an environment where the large global companies, the large buyers, they want to de-risk and they want to develop alternate sources of supply. And therefore, there is an urgent need, urgent desire to reduce the over dependence on China. The US China trade war is also a factor which is favoring this shift. As if this was not enough, the India China border standoff has created a deep sense of urgency and desire in the Indian government to increase our domestic manufacturing and to reduce our dependence on imports. And for the first time in my experience in India, there is a very deep sense of urgency, and the government is adopting both tariff and non-tariff measures to encourage manufacturing in India. The PLI scheme is one example of that. Now, PLI is basically the government will give cash subsidies to manufacturers based on certain criteria. And this has never happened in India before, where government gives out cash subsidies. India's trump card, or the one factor which is favoring India apart from low costs, is the large size of the Indian economy. And if you compare the size of India's economy with our neighbors like Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, etc., who are also competitive, it is our very large market which can enable us to encourage manufacturers to set up capacities in India. So I think this very large global manufacturing opportunity is coming to us for the second time. We missed it the last time in early 2000s, and I think the environment is right and favorable, and we should be able to capitalize on this. And this opportunity is so large that this can increase India's GDP growth going forward between 1 to 2% per year. So I think these are three clear positives of COVID: the opening up of the manufacturing opportunity, the low cost of capital, and the lower oil prices. Coming to the Indian economy itself, I think there is some sharp but temporary pain. This pain will be felt more by the low income households in India who depend on the service sector, and service sector is not functioning because the consuming households are not stepping out, and therefore the incomes of a large number of people who depend on service sectors like retail, hotels, travel, tourism, multiplexes, restaurants, all local transport, this is all disrupted. So I think there is considerable pain with the low income households, but the economy in aggregate is not experiencing that large pain because bulk of the consumption is with the top 10 to 20% homes. The mode of consumption has changed, but and therefore you can see the car sales are recovering much faster because the incomes of the top end is not that much impacted. And since bulk of the consumption is with them, the economy is also likely to recover pretty fast. But yes, it will cause some pain to a large number of low income, mid income households in India. And only time will be able to solve that problem. The economy is recovering pretty nicely, and I am sure that in the current quarter, next quarter, we will come back to near normal levels of economic activity, and certain lead indicators of economic activity are already extremely positive. Next year, optically, the growth will look very high because of the low base of the current year. We should ignore that. It is by fiscal 23, I think that our growth rates will start looking more normalized. So net, I think the economic outlook of India is positive, and the challenges posed by COVID are temporary and these will pass. The external side is extremely strong, which is a blessing for us. And in this period of crisis, government has undertaken many difficult reforms, and because of that, the foundations of the economy have strengthened. Coming to stock markets, I mean, while forecasting short-term movements of the markets is extremely difficult, and we never do that. But if you go back and see our commentaries or our similar webinars over last 6, 9 months, we have been quite positive on the markets. And to that extent, I am at least not surprised with what has happened. And let me now explain to you why this market is not excessive and why one should not be skeptical about these markets. See, point number one, if a company is making 100 rupees profits a year and the market cap is 2000 crores, it is the PE is 20. Now let's assume for 1 year the profit is zero. Then what happens? The fair value of the company falls from 2000 rupees to 1900 rupees. That's it. So this is a very simple point which all of us must appreciate, that an otherwise good business, if for some reason, if the profits are not there or are less in 1 year, the impact on fair value of that business is just about 5%, not more. So that I think is a very, very basic point which you must appreciate, because many people are looking at the current year's profits of some businesses and looking at the high PE multiples and are saying, oh my God, these PEs are very high and there is something wrong with the markets. So that is not the right way to look at the markets at all. And look at the profits for next year and the year after next, and you will get a better judgment on the valuations of the stocks in the markets. The second point is, because of COVID, the interest rates have fallen, not just globally, but also in India. Warren Buffett has said that when interest rates fall, interest rates act like gravity on stock prices. The higher the interest rates, the lower is the fair P multiple and vice versa. So lower interest rates have increased the fair value of the same businesses of the same cash flow stream. And I think the positive impact of on valuations of lower interest rates is more than the negative impact of lower profits for 1 year. So please keep that in mind. The third point is even today, if you look at the last 10-year returns of Nifty, it is in single digits. In last 10 years, the nominal GDP, the rupee GDP growth of the economy has been in double digits, which means India's markets have lagged the nominal GDP for quite long. And that is why India's market cap to GDP is at fairly reasonable levels. And that is the third reason why we think the markets are not overvalued, because for many years, the market returns have been below economic growth in rupee terms. The fourth reason is that this rally has been pretty concentrated, and at least until 1 month back or 2 months back. Between 2014 to 2018, the markets were dominated by small and mid caps. And that was a time when the Nifty was not doing well at all. And that was also a time when people used to tell me that don't compare your performance with Nifty. Nifty is so easy to beat. It is child's play to beat a Nifty. And we used to say, look, this will pass. This small mid cap outperformance is not sustainable and it will converge. And I do recall having mentioned this at your conference also, that why the growth rates are not linked to size, rather growth is linked more to the penetration of a business. I think today we are in the extremely opposite scenario. In last 2 years, small mid caps have not done well after 2018. And on the other hand, even the Nifty rally or Nifty returns, Nifty movement has been led mainly by 5 to 7 stocks. And last 2 years, the contribution of the top 5, 7 performing stocks was almost 100% to Nifty returns. And this is also a reason why many funds have underperformed the benchmarks in the last few years. Because when 5 stocks are delivering the entire Nifty returns, it becomes quite difficult for a portfolio with a 25 to 50 stocks to catch up with these indices. But I think over time, just like the small mid cap outperformance did not sustain, I think the current phase of 5, 7 stocks delivering bulk of Nifty returns will also not sustain. And over time, the markets will become more broad-based. And I think we are already beginning to experience this over the last 2 months, and I'm sure some of you must have seen that. So I think the current environment, which is neither dominated by few large caps nor by small mid caps, and where we are experiencing more broad-based movement in the market, I think this is a favorable environment for active managers. And I think the performance of funds against the benchmarks should improve in the current environment. And one last point I would like to share with you is on sectors. These are markets, while in aggregate, on an average, the markets I think are not overvalued. They are in aggregate, they are not too much undervalued also. But I think there is significant divergence in valuations across sectors. To my mind, and even though I've been wrong on this for last couple of years, I still feel the consumer sector is very expensive in India. No doubt it's a very high quality business. These are high quality businesses, but still I feel the multiples what we are paying and are rich compared to my assessment of the growth in the future. Businesses like IT, pharmaceuticals, private sector companies in oil and gas, large retail banks, leading retail banks in India, I think these are fairly valued. What that means is the returns in these businesses should be close to the underlying earnings growth because the multiples are quite fair. The businesses that are cheap, where multiples have room, where valuations have room to improve, are sectors that have not done well, which are disliked by most. These are some of the corporate banks in the country. both in public and in private sector. Some companies in the power sector and some engineering construction companies. I think these are three spaces where I feel the multiples are below long-term averages. And I feel despite the underperformance of these sectors in recent years, the undervaluation is such that over time they should play a catch up. And to my mind, valuations have room to improve. In some of these companies, the dividend yields is are much higher than the bond yields. See, you can buy a company's bond or you can buy a company's share. In cases where dividends are consistent, the business is not too volatile, companies are strong, balance sheets are healthy, and dividends are either likely to be maintained or they should grow. If in such cases, when the dividend yield is more than the bond yield, then to my mind it is a clear indication that the stock is undervalued. And if you look at some of the sectors I mentioned, many companies in these sectors, the dividend yields can go up to as high as two times of the bond yields. So I think that's a very clear indication that these some of these sectors are overvalued, because dividends, please bear in mind, is only a part of the profits. So when part of the profit itself is 1.5 or 2 times of the bond returns, then it points to considerable undervaluation. So that is one space I would like to draw your attention towards. To conclude my opening remarks, I think the future is bright for a country like India because of the very favorable external environment. And I think we all hope and in a way are confident that the COVID and the current disruption will pass. The government has taken many corrective steps, uh, brought about reforms which are positive for the economy. And I think the while equities are always a good instrument, a good asset class to create wealth, to earn above average, above inflation returns. I think in the current environment, when cost of capital is so low, I think equities have a special importance in times like these. And this, I think all of us must focus for some time as to what have we earned on our fixed income investments over last 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and what are the likely returns in the current low interest rate environment. So I think the current interest rate environment is so low that the hurdle rate uh, for equities is very low. And these low interest rates, I think equities should be able to outperform with relatively greater ease. And therefore, I think we must evaluate our asset allocation going forward. And whatever was a normal asset allocation, if risk appetite permits, I think because of these extremely low interest rates, I think there is reasons to reconsider our asset allocation and to improve our asset allocation towards equities. So let me stop here, Anikal, and thank you once again for this opportunity. And I am happy to answer any questions that are there.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I think a couple of questions which has come on the Indian economy. What steps that government has to take to correct the economy at this point in time, and also I think these questions have been addressed in your keynote. I'll just move on to. I think first let's start with on the HDFC side. There is one person asking on the HDFC Balance Advantage Fund. When we compare ourselves with the peers, I think the returns have to be on the lower side. So what is the strategy that as a company that HDFC is looking to improve the performance in the next couple of years? And what as an investor I should expect from this? Should I stay or should I move out of this fund is what the question is.
No fund manager will ever tell you to move out of the fund, even if the performance is not good, because portfolio managers are always optimistic about what they are doing, and the same is the answer for that question. And all I would,
one question, what he also meant was, I think,
I'm coming.
when are we expecting an outperformance? Yeah.
Yes, I'm coming to that. So See, I think one, equities are a long-term asset class, and when 1 year performance is weak, it impacts your 2 and 3 year performance also, and that is what has happened to the funds managed by me. Not just this fund, but some other funds that I look after. We have experienced similar challenges in performance even in the past, and you can go back and see our performance around 99 2000, around 2007-8, and you will see that we were in a very similar, these funds were in a very similar situation, but we managed to come back, and we managed to deliver, make up for the entire underperformance in the future. And I feel optimistic and confident about doing the same again, and I will tell you why. See, this underperformance is not because of any weak businesses in the portfolio. This underperformance is not because of the investments or the companies that we have in the portfolio are not growing. And none of these companies or this portfolio, it is also not because we own expensive shares. So our strategy to investments has been fairly simple, at least in my case. Buy strong, growing, and reasonably valued or undervalued companies. Focus on these. There could be some expensive companies also because you are making a diversified portfolio because of benchmarking reasons. But by and large, this has been the strategy. I think this is a very sound strategy because the businesses are growing, they are not losing competitiveness. It is just that their stock prices are not doing well. And that is not a reason for you to sell these stocks. And I have experienced time and again that stock markets can undervalue or overvalue a business or set of businesses for some time, but not for a very long time. The challenge is, as Mr. Buffett has said, that stock markets may remain irrational for longer than you may remain solvent. So the challenge is that our investment time horizons are shorter than a typical cycle in the stock markets. And that is what is impacting us. But I remain fairly confident that we should be able to recover this performance. And see, some of the things are changing also. A considerable part of the underperformance is because of investments in power utilities, most of which are public sector companies. And here I would like to spend 2-3 minutes because this is also one sector which I believe offers good value. See, earlier there was a policy of the government to reduce their stakes in PSUs through ETFs. And that was one reason to my mind why PSU shares did not do well. Fortunately, that policy has been changed, and DIPAM secretary himself has confirmed that ETFs going forward are unlikely. So that is one very big reason for underperformance in the past, which is not valid anymore. And over time, I think as markets understand this, appreciate this better, there should be outperformance in this space. The second reason for the underperformance of this space is because of a new theme that has gained ground in investing world, and that is ESG. So thermal power is not a preferred sector to invest anymore. I think this is the situation in India is slightly different because as we all know, India does not have oil, it does not have gas. What we do have is coal. So any country will use the cheapest source of energy what is available to it. So it is coal that we have, which is cheap and which is there in large quantities. And US and Europe have large amounts of gas and they have very little or very expensive coal. So I think in my understanding, coal is here to stay. Of course, coal thermal plants should become more efficient, less polluting, best technology should be used. But I don't think the demand for coal or thermal power is likely to go down in India for many, many years to come. Please consider one simple fact that power demand in 24 hours on any day is not constant. It varies by the time of the day. And the power demand in India peaks on a daily basis between 5 p.m. in the evening to 9 p.m. at night. It is these 4 hours where power demand is at a peak on a daily basis. And this time of the day, there is no sun. So you can produce and use solar energy during daytime, but how will you meet? How will the same solar plant supply power between 5 p.m. to 9 p.m.? So, and storage of power is very expensive. Currently, storage costs almost 10 rupees per unit. So, unless storage costs come down very sharply, which will take 3, 5, 10 years, till then, I think the demand for thermal power in India will continue to grow. In India, only 5% of the homes have air conditioning. So if you have air conditioning at home, you are in the top 5% of this country. So the reason I am saying this is the moment you install an air conditioner at home and use it for just 4 to 6 hours a day, the power consumption in the home typically doubles. So power is a growing sector in India. As we install more washing machines, more refrigerators, more mobile phones, more internet connectivity, more air conditioners, more air coolers, more mixers and grinders, more dishwashers. The penetration of all this is extremely low in India right now. So as our standards of living go up, as electric vehicles come, as manufacturing in India picks up, I think power demand in India will grow for fairly long periods, and therefore power is a growing business to my mind. And because of concerns around ESG, certain, I think, misunderstanding that thermal power has no future, which is not the case in my understanding for India. And because of the ETFs, these stocks have underperformed massively. And just to take you 12 years back, the same power utilities were the hottest investment then. And you can go back and I'm sure you can recall which were the hot IPOs, which were massively oversubscribed in the power sector. And these companies were then trading around 3 times price to book. And today they are below book. The dividend yields on these companies are 1.5 to 2 times the bond yields. The bond markets treat these companies as AAA companies. So I think there is clear mispricing of this, and over time this should correct. This has been one of the key reasons why the fund has underperformed. And I think there is deep undervaluation in that space. And as that corrects, we should be able to get back. One final point, while the gap looks pretty large when you between us and the peers of benchmark, but I have seen similar situations, and when the times change, when environment changes, these performance can be recovered very quickly. I am not promising you that we will do it, but in my judgment, since the portfolio is of strong, growing, and undervalued companies, over time we should be able to correct this.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, I think it's a question that is there in everybody's mind. As the markets are on high, this is a basic general question. Should we liquidate our holdings, and and what are the strategy that we should use, or should we just stay put in and then keep investing at this point in time when the markets are fairly valued, or they are the highest ever is what we have seen now?
See, markets have been at a all-time high for in many years over last 40 years. This index, as you know, started with 100, and when it was 1,000, people said the same. When it was 10,000, there were balloons on BSE. And so at every level, 10,000, 12, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, people ask this question. But please appreciate, in a growing economy, if your economy is touching a new high every year, if profits are touching a new high every year, then why should index not move up over time? So I think the key is not to say whether the index is at an all-time high or no, but the key is to say, is the index overvalued relative to the economy? And that's why I said, if 10-year returns of the index, even today, are below the nominal GDP growth of the country, if market cap to GDP is not above long-term averages, then I don't think it is fair to say that the markets are overvalued. See, equities, we should understand few things about equities. what can equities do, what they cannot do, and what is the right way to invest in equities. Equities create more wealth than fixed income. We know that. The maximum wealth for equities is created by patient investors. Equities are not a very complex investment. They are a very simple investment, but it is not very easy to make money in equities because they demand very high levels of uh, discipline and patience. I think Mr. Buffett has said that if you have a high IQ, then please don't waste your IQ by utilizing it for investing. Investing is a low IQ job, but it needs high EQ. EQ is basically discipline and patience. So I think in equities, the most patient investors are the most profitable investors also. If for last 10 years the index returns have been low, in my judgment, the next 10 years should be much better. Whenever in the history of the index, the trailing 10-year returns are low, the next 10 years are logically likely to be better because the index over time replicates the corporate profits growth. I think at points like these, especially, and that's why I referred to the cost of capital. If you put money in a fixed income instrument, if it is a high credit quality fixed income investment, your returns will be anywhere between 3 to 6% after tax. Now, that is a rate I think which equity should be able to beat by a very comfortable, high degree of confidence in my opinion and by a reasonable margin. So, timing equities is extremely difficult, and short term timing is very, very difficult. And the fall at during COVID and the recovery, what does it tell us? The key lesson is, did anyone tell you markets will fall to that low, those levels? And did anyone tell us that markets will recover so fast? No one. So timing is very difficult in equities. So to my suggestion would be that given the fact or given my opinion that markets are not overvalued, given the fact that Indian economy will continue to grow, given the fact that capital cost of capital is very low and your alternate investments will yield you low returns, to the extent you can hold equities for the next 3 5 years, and to the extent you can tolerate volatility, you should remain invested in equities as an asset class, but please do remain diversified across sectors. Yes.